leaders, good to see you here today. We are in a new space, blank wall behind me, because I am getting ready to move. But I did want to jump on and just share some information with you that's been coming up as we went through the symposium. And I was teaching a class yesterday and people were asking questions, and I just thought, oh, this is a really important topic. So one of the things that we know people quote incorrectly all the time is that 80% of jobs are not posted. That is not the correct statistic. It's not what the data ever was saying. So we're going to look at that a little bit today, and then I'm going to dive deeper into it in my newsletter. But we're going to look at some of the statistics around that today, and then talk about 3 tips that your clients can use to access the job they really want, right? And that's where the hidden job market really came in. It wasn't that the jobs are hidden, but it's the way that we get hired for our desired position may likely be not just because we applied to an online posting. Let's unpack some of that data and then also talk about how your clients can use some of these insights to really improve their job search. So if you're joining us today, feel free to say hello in the chat. I'd love to hear where you're joining us from. And I know last week the audio was a little bad because we were at the symposium. So glad to be back in a quiet space, although I am not in my office space. So hopefully the sound is okay and we won't be interrupted by the doorbell or the dog or all those other things that are now out here in view of me. So let's dive in and talk a little bit about this data. And I'm just going to share a few things with you, a few visuals that I hope can help get this point across in terms of why this matters so much and why we are worried about it in talking about where jobs come from and how that all fits together. And again, kind of why we may be misquoting this data. And I'm not going to dive too deep into it today because it is a little bit to unpack, but I do want to share some of it with you today. So let me see if I can share the right thing here and get what I want to get. Okay, here we go. So this is the data that we typically see and are quoting on the left side here, where we've got this little graphic. So this graphic actually came from an article that didn't share where the source of this data was, but it's pretty common knowledge, if you will, in our industry that jobs come from networking. However, as I said, we oftentimes misquote this by saying 80% of jobs aren't posted. That is not what this data is saying. This data is saying that 75% of people were hired from networking. That means the job could still have been posted, but when the people were actually hired, they were hired because of networking. And I'm going to unpack where this data came from in my next newsletter. I actually think it comes from a Harvard Business Review study, and we'll dive deeper into that. But the data itself is not necessarily wrong. How we interpret it oftentimes is misunderstood. Again, it's not that 80% of jobs aren't posted. It's that 60 to 80% of jobs are hired because someone knew someone. And of course, that's going to apply to the corporate setting, not in the federal setting and other places, although networking can still be important in those areas. And I'll tell you my own story about that here in a little bit. Then on the right-hand side here of how companies fill roles, that is a graphic from Lou Adler and research that he has shared, just in terms of that people will ask, hey, do you know anyone, and get referrals for a job. They still may post that job publicly, but they will get referrals, and that they'll ultimately end up hiring someone that someone referred in. And we'll go through some of that data in just a minute. But this is why we call it the hidden job market. It isn't because the jobs aren't posted, but it's because they are typically hired based on someone's familiarity with someone else. And we'll come back around to that as we get into our 3 tips for today. So our 3 tips are going to be focused, although I'm going to talk about it in a little bit different way than we usually do. Familiarity and how we get to be that familiar, that known candidate. And then our follow-up. And as I was talking to someone this past week like that follow-up piece just kind of hit me up over the head again, that this is an awesome way for us to stand out because most people don't follow up. So let's lead off and start talking a little bit about the focus piece. And we know that focus is so important for job search, especially when we're thinking about people want to get a new job, they want to change careers. You can't go anywhere without a map, right? You can't figure out where you want to go if you don't have a general idea. And most people do have a general idea, but they're afraid of focusing. They're afraid of eliminating opportunities by focusing. Unfortunately, and kind of perhaps ironically, simply by not focusing, they're eliminating opportunities. Because when you're not focused, you cannot do the proactive job search that we know you need to do. And you certainly aren't going to be able to land in a place that you really want to be when you don't have that focus. So I typically talk about the 4 areas of focus in terms of what you want to do. And that's the skills, what role do you want to play, the industries, so where do you want to go, and then how you work best. So that might be a little bit more about the environment or the culture. And then, of course, that piece of why you want to work. Those values are going to connect you to the companies that you want to work for. And when you have that foundation, then you can build on it to do some of what we're going to talk about and the next area of focus, which is really about the target list. So the target list is something that we all talk to our clients about, and you need a target list, and you're going to use your target list in your job search. But I found that oftentimes we weren't giving them all the reasons that a target list could be helpful. And we weren't giving them, like, really, this is going to be the foundation of your search because you can use it in all these ways. So I created a checklist because that I find checklists to be very helpful, both for you as a practitioner as well as for your job seekers. One, because you can physically check things off the list, and two, because it gives you a lot of ideas when opportunity may feel scarce. So whenever we're in change, whenever we're experiencing change, we tend to see limited opportunities. We tend to kind of make our world smaller, which is really unhelpful when we're trying to make a job change. But that's just our nature. Our nature is to kind of close down when we're in change, to get that fear response. And so we don't see as many opportunities. And I love to create checklists because it, again, just kind of broadens. Look at all of the things that you can do and look at all the opportunities that are available if we look at it this different way. So I'm not going to show you the checklist because the words on it might be hard to read, but I do want to show you this visual that I share with people that just goes through all the different ways that you can use your target list. And there are so many ways that you can use your target list. You can obviously use it to do a better job of looking at job ads, and that's cold. It's there in blue because it's cold approach, right? You're going to go in cold and not be any different than anyone else. Direct approach. So you could use your target list to send direct mail letters or approach people cold directly through something like LinkedIn or Twitter or Instagram and speak directly to them about that job because they're on your target list, or speak directly to them about that company because they're on your target list. You could also use social media in a warmer way, here in the orange thing, where you're going to build relationships, you're going to comment on your target company's posts, you're going to warm up that relationship that way. And you can see all these other ways that people could use their target list that they typically don't think of during job search, and that gives them so many more opportunities. Susan Britton, one of the first people that I learned some job search techniques from, she used to talk about the little O for openings and the big O for opportunities. And that's what we want to help people see. Get out of the little O and looking at openings and get that broader picture of all of the opportunities that could be available. And a target list is the number one focus tool to help you do that. The other thing that our target list does, and I was teaching this to our resume development coaching class this week, is that it gives you an even deeper level of focus. Because now not only do you have your what, where, why, and how, but you also have a really deep idea of who are these people. Are they in manufacturing? Are they in healthcare? because that's going to change your messaging. It's going to change your networking. It's going to change everything about your search when you are really clear about who your target audience is. They want that. Good marketing speaks directly to an audience, and that's what all of our career communications are. They're a form of marketing and making that connection. And you cannot connect if you don't have a clear idea of who that target audience really is. So I find the target audience and the target company list, to be a huge value. And I know many of us talk about it, but I'd expand how you talk to people about it being used in their search, because it is so important. Sorry about that. A little interruption here from Alexa for some reason going off in the middle of the day. So this is the focus piece, is not only what do you want to do and where do you want to work, but really having a clear idea of that target audience. And as I said, just creating that opportunity for people to really understand what this looks like and how they can use it. Because we often tell people, create a target list, but then it's like, well, what are you going to do with it? Do I really need it? Or maybe I put 5 companies on it and I really don't know what I'm doing with it. And so hopefully that visual gives you some ideas of different ways that you can use that. So the next F, our next tip, is familiarity. And we know that being that referred candidate is so powerful, because our employers still today, even though there's been a little bit of conversation about it not being as important, we know that it is important, and people would prefer to hire someone that they can get that inside scoop on, right? We all want that inside scoop. And if I can get that inside scoop on a candidate, I'm going to want to bring them in. And so this was just a little bit of data that we had from a previous JobVite study. This one's from 2020, that just showed that importance of referral and seen as a better candidate. And there's lots of data around this. We know this, but this is our challenge for our clients. How do you gain that familiarity? How do you become the known quantity that you want to become? Because if you don't have a structure and a way of doing that, you just end up going to a lot of fun cocktail events, but not really getting anywhere. And so that's part of what we want to help people achieve as well. And we've got a little tool for you here, I'll bring up on the screen, that we give to our students in the Certified Hidden Job Market course. And I've deemed this our power circle. And it's really those people that already know, like, and trust you. We also teach you how to do the cold approach and research a company and do the cold approach. However, I think for most people in most situations, the power circle is more powerful and it's easier than a bunch of cold calls. That's why people laud their cold calling skills, because it's hard and most clients are going to struggle with that. It's still possible. We'll teach you how to do it. We'll give you tools how to do it in the class. However, people starting with the people they already know, like, and trust is a good way to start. Now, what that Harvard Business Review research showed was that those people in our direct circle are not necessarily going to be the ones that give us an opportunity, right? They're not the hiring manager at our companies that we want to work for. However, if we have a good conversation with these people, we can often access that next level of familiarity, be that person that was known, that was introduced into those roles that we want. But we've got to start by really getting an idea of who we already know. And I separated these into 3 C's. They start with the coworkers, professional contacts, because those are the ones that are most likely to give us a referral into our next opportunity. But of course, you also have your confidants, your friends and family, the people that really already know, like, and trust you. Neighbors, don't forget about them. And then your connectors. And these are the people in your life that know everyone. And it may be, the real estate agent, the accountant, or it may be the salesperson for your current company or your last company who knew everyone in the industry. So they kind of fit in both realms there in terms of being a coworker as well as a connector. getting people to really brainstorm and understand their network is a good place to start. But then they've got to know, how are they going to have that network help them in a way that is more productive? Because most of our clients will ask people, oh, do you know anyone? Or, oh, this is maybe the type of job I'm looking for. And then they get sent right back into that pool of people that are applying to the open roles, and it doesn't do them any good. So, hey, Jeff, good to see you. Thanks for popping in. Good to see you again. Thank you. So we want to help them be that familiar candidate, which means they've got to have a good option for building their network, but also a good structure for staying in touch with that network. And that brings us to our third key, which is follow up. So I remember talking to my sales coach when I was starting to go to events as a vendor. And he said, what's your process going to be for following up? And we need to set that ahead of time. You want to set out your time ahead of time. How are you going to do that? He said 80% of the vendors that pay to go to an event, that pay to be a vendor, an exhibitor at an event, will not do their follow-up. Right? You paid to be at this event, and you're not going to do your follow-up. Our job seekers are the same. Our job seekers are not doing their follow-up, and you know this. Most of us struggle with it, which is silly because you put in all the effort to go to that networking event, or all the effort to have that, networking meeting, and now you're not going to do the follow-up afterwards. But it's something in our psyche that, oh, I don't want to bother that person, or whatever it is. It doesn't work for us. It doesn't do anything for us, and it actually makes us look unprofessional when it's kind of that irony again of, we think we're going to be bothering that person, but actually not following up makes us look worse. And so how can we help our clients do that? So in the Certified Hidden Job Market class, we also like to give you, we give you some scripts, so you will get some scripts, but we also like to give you some tools that give people an idea of how to manage a conversation. Because I noticed that, some people do conversation well, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're getting a benefit out of it. And a lot of people just don't do conversation well, right? We don't know what to ask. We don't know what to go next. We're kind of lost in terms of how to manage these types of conversations. So I created 3 or 4 different outlines for you, in addition to some other scripts that you can use. And this one is for meeting with a warm contact. So it'd be meeting with someone in our circle, in our power circle, or someone that maybe we're directly introduced to from that power circle. And our first goal is really to connect. That's it. That's our goal. And to see, what do we have in common with this person, to learn about them, to see how they know our common connection. And when we have that as one of our goals, we're always going to be successful, and the conversation's always going to go well, because that's one of our goals, is simply just to make this new connection, to build that relationship, and to find out, how we both know the person that is our common connection. Then we can do a little bit of asking. It's not a bad thing to ask, but it's really having some short sound bites. We have a soundbite exercise. I'm not a huge fan of the elevator pitch, because you're not pitching. You are in conversation. You're being able to share what you do. You're going to ask those types of questions. You want to be able to answer them. What are your goals? What are you passionate about? Depending on your language and your industry, what will fit here? But it's just having those short sound bites that are clean and clear and memorable, but not overdone in terms of thinking that you're pitching the other person, because that's not the purpose of this conversation. You're going to gather some information. So we've got a whole list of questions that your individuals can ask to gather information about the companies, the industry, the person themselves, the trends, what's going on, depending on their personality and the types of people that they're talking to. And this works for all levels. Different types of questions are going to engage different levels of people. If you're talking to other executives, talking about economic trends or big industry trends, they're going to be drawn into those conversations and have such a great time talking with you. And that's really the benefit of these conversations, is that both people leave having enjoyed the conversation. Then you can ask specifically for help, and I always want to ask for multiple ways that someone can help me so that they'll always feel successful at the end of that conversation. And then this goes into our follow up piece, is that you really need to follow up with these folks when you're doing networking meetings, because there's no excuse not to. There's no time suck for a job. There's no, time limit. It's follow up, do a nice follow up with them so that you have that opportunity to reconnect. And I think I'm going to do a free webinar on that, because I have this whole presentation that I've given around follow up and all the different ways that you can follow up after interviews, after networking, after you apply to a job. And it really does make a big difference, because most people don't do it. So I look forward to hearing your thoughts on job seekers and how you're helping them find the right job, the job that they really want. And if you have any questions about our hidden job market class, please let me know. We will start that class next Wednesday, and we'd love to have you in the course. And if you have any other topics or things that you'd like us to talk about on our Trend Tuesdays, please let me know that as well. Thank you, everyone, and we will see you next week.